We need to talk about Warhammer 40k Space Marine from Force Gaming. Let's get into this, because I want to talk about that game too.
So as you probably know, Space Marine 2 recently released, and it's gone pretty well. The game reached a peak player count of 134,000 concurrent on Steam, which put it in the top 15.
And that is only early access. It comes out today. It's going to go crazy.
Games on the platform for the week, which in and of itself isn't bad, but there's two additional points worth adding. For one, this was the pay extra for earlier access release, with the lowest available option ringing up at $90 US. So I expect that there are a decent number of people who are waiting until the official launch on Monday, which is priced at the standard 60 USD. This will at the very least bring another surge of players, if not surpassing the prior peak. Either way though, it's quite impressive for the franchise, because you have to consider point number two, and that is that 134,000 concurrent players officially puts Space Marine 2 just behind Total War Warhammer 3 as the second most popular Warhammer game to launch on Steam ever, and that is awesome. Putting aside my general dislike for the whole pay us extra money to play the game earlier than those who don't trend, I've been seeing this across the entire industry, and I don't love it ever, but those marketing and sales tactics aside, the game itself, what do I think of it? Well, I think it's very good. Like, fact is, I actually think it's the best Warhammer game I've ever played, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of its gameplay, its production value, the world building, the sheer badass.
The game looks insanely good, and I cannot wait to play it. Honestly, I spoiled it for myself because I watched the whole story, I watched the whole everything, but bro, it looks so damn good. And the story is so fun. It's literally so fun.
Mastery of the whole thing. It's a great Warhammer game. I mean, I've just thoroughly enjoyed Space Marine 2. It's not a perfect game. There's plenty of room for improvements, but I have generally loved my time with it thus far. Even more so now that the PvP is up and running, which has been stupid good fun, by the way. It's rather simple and straightforward, not a lot to it, but it's still fun. And yeah, so for all those reasons, I'm quite happy to see that the game is...
You literally don't need much to make a good game, I feel like. So many studios are overcomplicating the games and trying to put in this so like complicated and like intricate systems in some gameplay mechanics and everything, and that's where everything gets fucked up. And that's where so many games like Spaghetti Code comes from, like looking at you Tarkov and everything like that. But make it simple, make it good. That's all you need.
Doing well right now. Now, the critic reviews, they've sort of been a mixed bag. They do lean positive. Currently, the game's averaging a score of 83 on Metacritic and also an 83 on OpenCritic, with it getting a 91% critic recommendation. The reviews range from being in the 80s and 90s to the lowest score from a major publication being 60, and that came from both PC Gamer and PC Games N. Now, even for all my various critiques of Space Marine 2, which I do have a few, it was curious to see scores quite that low. 6 out of 10. I don't know, it just doesn't jive with me, right? Now, the TLDR of my review was that I really like the game. I think it does a ton of things right, and I would recommend it to people, with a few caveats and exceptions. However, for me, the pros outweigh the cons. And those pros include the gameplay being really good, like exceptionally good. I'd consider the moment-to-moment combat in Space Marine 2 to be like a 10 out of 10. Just the whole process of mowing through hordes of Tyranids and Chaos Marines, they knocked it out of the...
They literally nailed the feeling of when I listen to Warhammer lore or when I read Warhammer lore. Like, this is the feeling that I have in my head when I read or hear about Space Marines. They just give it such a, I don't even know. It's such an accurate like representation of the feeling that I would like feel if I was a Space Marine. It's so good. It feels so right.
The park, you are constantly surrounded by an insane number of enemies, fighting your way through, cleaving down the weaker ones, focusing with
every move you feel that weight. That's a really good way to put it, I feel like.
Your parries and dodges to get perfect counters, while also keeping an eye out for interrupts, for dodging sniper fire, and for aiding your teammates when they need help. All of this coupled with the over-the-top finishers that break up the action. Just the whole thing, it's very enjoyable, it is visceral, and it all has a real nice flow to it. Honestly, it's one of the better combat systems in a third-person action game that I've played in a while. I just really, really like it. And as someone who isn't even into the franchise, it's also pretty clear to me that they have nailed this whole Space Marine fantasy. I mean, you are playing as what is essentially a lumbering bringer of death, stomping your way through levels and yeeting everything that is in your path into this alternate dimension. Death, they're all dying. While at the same time, all of this like over-the-top crazy stuff is happening. There are just so many moments where all around you, off in the distance and up in the skies, there are just swarms and swarms of literally thousands of enemies with explosions going off everywhere, lass and bolt gun fire constantly raining, while you and your team is stomping ever forward, smashing your way through those masses. In my review,
I'm stopping there because that is something that is incredibly important to mention. That this guy, as he said, he does not know about Warhammer lore. And he easily puts the game at an 8 or something, at least. As someone who loves Warhammer, who's been reading stuff and listening to stories and lore and everything for a while now, like ever since like I played Dawn of War 2 back then. I don't even know when was that honestly released. Not Dawn of War 2, the original Dawn of War, and the Warhammer Age of Reckoning Online. That those two games were my introduction to Warhammer, and ever since then, bro, I've been obsessed. Literally, I do not play minis because I think they are overpriced, and honestly, I don't think it's worth it. I'm sorry, I said it. It's just way too much money. As a Hungarian, we don't make that much money, okay? And saying that, and I play fucking airsoft, whatever. That's an airsoft YouTube, not a gun, okay? So, yeah, I just don't play that, okay? I do play Battle Sector. That's cheaper. But yeah, so I feel like for a Warhammer fan, this game is an 11. Like, it is an 11. The lore, the accuracy, the war customization, the fact that it's not just the goddamn Blue Smurf and the Sons of Gilliman that is included. It's so good. I can be a White Scar. I can be Salamander. I'm pretty sure the successor chapters are included, like, I don't know, like Iron Drakes or Dark Krakens or whatever the Salamanders like successors are from the Ultima founding. But like, you know, it is so good. It includes so much chapter and everything, and not just Ultramarines like it's usually as. Yeah, I'm salty. So yeah, it's so good. So as someone who likes this, I like to listen to I literally sleep to Warhammer lore, bro. Like, it's so good. I'm kind of lazy to read nowadays, so I'm just listening to roar.
I said it feels like the personification of playing through like a death metal album, short of something like Metal Hellsinger. Space Marine 2 gives exactly those vibes. And with that as well, the world building here is top notch. The developer clearly has done a great job and has a passion for representing the grim, oppressive feeling as well as the massive scale of just about everything in the 40k universe. These towering, gothic-inspired structures that pierce through the clouds, those never-ending waves of enemies pouring through the streets and filling up the skies, while you and your
the whole visualization of the Warhammer universe with the grimdark and everything, it is so good. It is incredible.
Allies as well as your artillery there to meet them in a bombastic show. Just the visuals, the sounds, all the set pieces, and all the action that's taking place, it is pretty amazing from start to finish as far as that is concerned. And then the game ran well for me, and performance was really good outside of a few noticeable hitches here and there. For the most part, game ran smooth as butter, although I do have a high-end PC, and from what I've read and heard, not everyone's performance has been great. Now, for all of that in mind, there are some cons, starting with a few of the smaller gripes I had. bad, like the lack of FOV slider. This is especially noticeable playing on PC. The game does have this like dynamic camera where it will change positions based on what's occurring on the screen, and at its very worst, your character can easily take up a fourth, if not a third, of the entire frame, the whole screen, which is just a bit much. But yes, at all times, I think an FOV slider that lets me extend my field of view, that would be very, very welcome. Another con is this inconsistent feel to the parry system, which just resulted in me dodging most of the time because it was far more reliable and far less punishing. Even if you didn't have perfect timing, at least you dodged away from the damage rather than sitting there in an animation that missed and then getting hit. I felt the campaign pacing was just a little off, with lots of stops to the action, lots of fades to black, and downtime with the abundant use of corridors and elevators all throughout. And also the game has what I would consider a fairly almost artificial feeling drawn out PvE class progression. It took us roughly 30 hours on average to reach max level on a single character class, which in and of itself wouldn't be a problem if not for what is my biggest issue with the game currently, and that is its content variety. The game's just a bit on the lighter side in terms of the amount and variety of content. There's nothing else to it. The campaign...
I mean, how should I put this? I rather have a game that plays well, feels well, and feel good to play in general, and it has less content. Because content is something that can be added later. But redoing the game is not really possible. We have a really good base game. We have a decent amount of content from what I've seen in the game. And the developers already confirmed new enemies and new content. So I am kinda good on that. Like if they add orcs, if they add Tau... Oh, that would be interesting. If they add Tau too. I can see them adding orcs. I am not sure about if they would ever add Tau or Eldars. Dark Eldars I can see. What will be good to fight against? Like what enemies? I feel like orcs definitely. Necrons would be interesting. I would love it. Honestly speaking, I would love it. More races are there, the better. Orcs would be fantastic. Like fighting waves of orcs is just sounds incredible. Yeah, I think they're going to go for orcs next if they add new enemies. It's definitely going to be orcs, or they add difference like Tyranids and more Chaos Legions. More Chaos Legions would be nice as well.
Took us just under 6 hours playing on hard, which people thought was fast at the time of the review. I got that feedback, but now that the game is out in the wild, it seems like many other players are also finishing in that 6 to 8 hour range. So most of your time and most of the replayability in Space Marine 2 is going to come from the other modes, those being the PvE.
Yeah, but the game is $40. Like for $40, having an 8-hour campaign, perfect. No, don't need more. The story is good. We don't need more. Make something good, even if it lasts like less time, but it's good. It's good. The base is good. That's what we want. For the love of God. Then, after that's done, they can add more content. It's cheap. The base is good. Plenty of content for that much money. That's it. Like literally. Don't need more.
Co-op operations and the competitive PvP. The PvP is a lot of fun. I really enjoy it, and for those of you who do, that's great. It's rather simple and straightforward. You got teams of 6 competing on a handful of maps in one of 3 modes that amount to racking up kills or controlling zones. It's been fun, simple but fun. It's a nice mode to mess around with, but I'm also aware that not everyone cares about PvP, in which case, after the campaign, what you have left is the PvE co-op operations. So there are 6 missions in total, which you will run over and over again. You do this to level up your classes, unlocking new perks and weapons, making you stronger, and this lets you push the difficulty higher from tiers 1, 2 to 3, and 4. But beyond the enemies getting tougher and a more frequent occurrence of the mini bosses, not much changes from the easiest to the hardest difficulty. It is the same missions that have the exact same level layout every time, the corridors, the halls, the open areas. It is all always exactly the same. It's just the mix of enemies that you get, their placement, what what types of them, that will change from run to run. And then of
That's
course,
good.
the higher the difficulty, the harder they are, they deal more damage, they kill you faster, etc., etc. Now the gameplay is amazing. Like I said, I love playing Space Marine 2, and I do recommend the game. It's just the one major caveat being the fact that it is on that lighter side of content, so depending on your appetite for the PvE operations, grinding those, or for playing PvP, your mileage, aka your playtime, may vary quite a lot. Now they do have some big updates planned with more content coming,
Yep,
but
sir.
that's happening in time, not at this very second. As
It
for
doesn't
myself,
matter.
I've already played over 50 hours and counting. I will be playing a bit more over the next week for sure. Specifically, I'm planning to spend more time with the PvP, and I'll be totally happy if I finish this
50 hours of gameplay for $40. Now compare that some of these new games, $70 or $100 that you pay, and you can put like 10, 20 hours into the game and that's it. It's a good deal.
game at around a 60 or 70 hour mark, because hey, not every game needs to last forever or be a live service with thousands of potential hours of content. But I also understand that not everybody feels that way, which is why I bring it up. It's why I talk about it, because the game does clearly have a limited scope and limited content variety. People's budgets for gaming are different, and there's plenty of people out there who are looking to maximize the bang for their buck, and I get that. Not every game can fulfill that, and I don't think Space Marine 2 really does. But again, to me, that's totally fine. I just need people to be aware if that's not the case for them. Now that the game is officially out, the user reviews have also started pouring in. On launch day, they started off at a mixed rating, but it has since been climbing and currently actually sits at mostly positive with a 77%.
Actually, let's check that. For ourselves, how much was when it
Was officially out, the user reviews have also started pouring in. On launch day, they started off at a mixed rating, but
so it was mixed on start.
It has since been climbing and currently actually sits at mostly positive with
mostly
a 77% as of
77% mostly positive. Now, I'm going to show you right now how it is. And this is it currently. 80% positive. And how many days was it? 1 day ago. I don't know when did he record the video, but he uploaded it 1 day ago. Ever since then, 5,000 more reviews been added, and it went up by 3% to the positive side, and it's very positive now. I mean, that's really good.
This recording. If you're curious, by the way, the threshold here is 70. So below 70%, down all the way to 40, a game will have a rating of mixed. And then once you reach 70, it tips over to mostly positive. And then from 70 to 80%, at 80%, it bumps into just plain old positive. Now, I believe on launch day, that mixed score was something like a 66 or 67. It was around there. So it's already climbed 10 points all the way up to 77%. And I think there's a good chance it gets those additional 3 points and at least breaks the 80% threshold, tipping it over into a flat out positive rating, because yes, it is a good game overall in spite of its shortcomings. User reviews have seemed to mostly echo the main points that I had in my review in terms of the positive sides of the game. Although obviously you also, on top of that, have the whole dedicated 40k fandom in here who are far more invested and fanatical about the franchise than myself. So there's a whole lot of like "for the Emperor" being shouted in the user reviews. It's kind of funny, and honestly,
there's many of us. Many.
Good on him. I'd say it's about time. As I mentioned earlier, Space Marine 2 is officially the second most successful Warhammer game to come to Steam in terms of concurrent players, even though there's been quite a lot of Warhammer games, many of them didn't turn out so great. So I think it's awesome that Warhammer 40k fans and just Warhammer fans in general are finally getting some good games for their favorite IP. Now, beyond all the positives and the negatives covered in my review, there have been some additional launch-specific pain points that have cropped up. So these include being matched into lobbies with a duplicate class to the one that you've selected. Okay, so there are 6 classes in the game. They fill different roles, they got different playstyles and special abilities and weapons they can use. And in the PvE operations, there can only be one of each class per squad. Now, when we played the game for review, this wasn't a problem. My friends and I, we all just picked separate classes, we played it, and we liked what we played, right? However, now that launch is here, people are picking the class that they want to play. So let's just say it's the Bulwark, and then they are matchmaking into operations, and they are getting placed into teams that already already have a bulwark, which then forces the joining player to pick a different class. Now, seeing as they have selected a class before they even enter matchmaking, the obvious solution here would be to not match people with a squad that already has the class that they have selected in it.
That is
or
fair.
at the very least, give players the option to do so, even if that means slightly increased queue times to match into a smaller pool of players, right? So hopefully this is something that they can address soon, because I've seen this.
How the game is made, I think they're going to fix that in no time. Like, I am that positive about the game. I think it's going to be fixed in no time.
Complaint crop up quite a lot. Speaking of matchmaking, it has had some issues with the servers likely loaded these first few days. Matching has been inconsistent, if not downright broken at times. Even just loading into the game, like even just getting into the battle barge, has been difficult during certain times of day. It's just not happening. And then you have the people attempting to join an operation or to queue into PvP and simply not finding any matches, just forever spinning the wheel essentially. And this isn't due to lack of players. There's over 100,000 peak players playing every day, but the matchmaking services are clearly not working properly, and that is likely due to overload. So this isn't an uncommon issue, but it is nevertheless annoying whenever it happens, although it is likely to smooth out over the coming week. So
hopefully,
we'll hope for that. Another one of the recurring complaints that I've been seeing is the fact that the AI teammates are just bad. Like something that I didn't notice in my review because I played with real people, but now that the game is out and players are trying to solo the harder difficulties with an AI squad, apparently it's not good. Not even. They're just really, really bad. They don't work with you at all. They tend to not stick to the objective, and they deal what seems like negative damage. I do remember that from my preview the other month. Now, on the plus side, it does seem like they never die, and they will res you almost instantly if you go down, but that doesn't clearly make up for all that they are lacking. Considering how many people prefer to play games like this solo, hopefully they can address this soon. The first thing that comes to mind would be...
Okay, one thing. I never understand people who would play games like this solo. Like, I guess if you wanna, like, autistically grind out something, I guess, then maybe. But overall, isn't it the fun of this to play together? I don't know. Maybe I'm just so used to playing with people, games like this, that that's fun to play it with someone. Like, why would I grind a game if I not play it with someone? Like, when am I going to flex my cool armor still, you know?
Allowing you to issue commands to your AI teammates, even if it's just like a focus fire command, even if you could just tell your two squad members to shoot a particular target, I think that would add a lot. In fact, the game already has a ping system, so maybe they could just move this functionality into that as well. Another big thing I saw people complaining about was the fact that the game automatically installs the Epic Online services. So the developer has stated that this was done in order to support the optional crossplay between Steam and Epic players, as well as to synchronize friends lists between the two stores. The fact that they installed this additional like supportive software in addition to the game does not bother me at all, but I know there's people who really don't like this sort of thing. If it does bother you, as far as I've read, you can totally uninstall the Epic Online services and the game will still function properly. It's just you won't have that like Steam to Epic Game Store synchronization. But if you don't care, apparently you can still run the game without it by installing the game and then uninstalling Epic Online services. Now, while the game did run perfectly fine for me in terms of performance, it hasn't been universal, as I mentioned. Some users have reported issues with the game ranging from fluctuating frame rates and random stuttering to outright hard crashing to desktop, obviously something that we hope they address. And then finally, the final big consistent complaint that I'm seeing is the lack of FOV slider. Now, that was in my review, but I want it so badly, I just had to bring it up again. Just please, for the love of God, give us an FOV slider. That's it. Not much else to say. Just give us an FOV slider. All right, so the PvP. When we did the review, if you recall, the matchmaking servers, they were down prior to launch. We just couldn't test the PvP at all. But now that the game is out, we have been able to play it. I've spent a couple of days with it, and I'm happy to say it's good. I like it a lot. It is simple and straightforward, but rather fun. It kind of feels like an old school PvP game. There's 3 basic modes. You got what is Team Deathmatch, the first to 50 kills wins. You got Domination, where you capture a zone that moves throughout the match, try to cap out the points, you win. And then King of the Hill, which is the same thing. And instead of the moving zones, there are 3 static zones. Try to capture them, cap your points, you win. Now, the PvP certainly isn't as robust as like dedicated PvP games. And like I said, it is pretty darn simple. simple, but it's a nice additional game mode on top of the PvE co-op operations. I like it. I like it as a way to mix things up. The gameplay feels also quite different than when you're playing the campaign or when you're playing the PvE operations. Mainly, there's a much shorter time to kill here, and then also there's some mechanical differences. Like, for example, melee bypasses armor. So when you're shooting a character, it deals armor damage and then health damage, but when you melee a character, it goes straight to health. It ignores whatever armor that they have. And that's an interesting balance decision, and I've seen a lot of people saying that melee is really bad, but I don't think it is. I think if you know how to properly utilize it, you could come up to a character who doesn't have a lot of health, but then they had replenished their armor, say from a banner, from a bulwark character, and if they don't have a lot of health, but they have a lot of armor, don't shoot them. Just melee them. You're going to instantly go to their health and kill them probably straight away. So yeah, simple, straightforward, but it is enjoyable. It's been fun messing around for a few afternoons. I plan to do this for at least a few more afternoons with my friends. Now, as for the extended thoughts after launch, you know, I've had some more time to sort of ruminate and think about the game, digest everything. The general sentiment that I had in my initial review, it stands. I think the game is quite good. It's definitely the best 40K game that I've ever played. While it is fairly limited in terms of that longer term replayability, if that's something you're looking for, keep that in mind. The launch version of the game doesn't necessarily have a ton of replayability, but just as a base experience, like playing through the campaign, grinding some PvE co-op operations with your friends, and then playing some PvP, you can easily get a good 20, 40, 50 plus hours out of the game. Like, it totally delivers that. But it's not going to be a 100, 200, 300, 1,000 plus hour live service game. That's not what they are aiming for, and that's not what this game delivers. I will say the roadmap looks pretty good, and because the launch has been so successful, it seems very likely that the developer will be chugging away over this next year and totally delivering on what they had on their roadmap. That's my expectation, in which they are going to be planning to add a dueling system, private PvE lobbies, there will be new PvE missions, a 5th difficulty tier, new enemies and weapons, new PvP game modes, and for PvE, they will be adding a horde mode. Now, as of now, this is slated for the 4th update, which is, I don't know, sometime mid to late 2025. I think they should push this up and add this as soon as possible, because I think adding a horde mode to this game would go a very long way. If the horde mode is constructed properly, it would go a very long way in adding pretty much potentially endless replayability. I mean, when we were playing through this game, when we were playing the campaign, but specifically when we were playing the PvE co-op operations, we kept saying a horde mode would be unbelievable because the combat feels so good. The moment to moment is so fun. It's so over the top. It's just so exhilarating. There's so much flow to the whole act of engaging.
I mean, just imagine those hordes of tyrannies just pouring down on you in a horde mode and constantly fighting and fighting. And that would be so interesting. Really, really
if they had a mode which was just literally wave after wave, like mimic Gears of War, where you get increasingly harder waves and they technically never end, but it gets to a difficulty point where eventually, like, you start off with the basic ones and a few elites here and there, and then you get more and more elites, and then you start throwing in the mini.
Oh my god, maybe make it roguelike in a way. Like, you can, like, how should I do it? Like, I would do it in a way, like the roguelike. Oh my god, I have to talk about this. Let's finish the video first.
Bosses, the Carnifexes and the Neurothropes, and then eventually you get to a point where you're coming up against like 20, 30 Carnifexes. Like, you could just make it could be so crazy. I don't know, maybe the game's performance-wise couldn't handle it, but the idea of a horde mode, if properly implemented, it just would take this game to another level in and of itself. Even more so, I think, than adding 3 more operation missions. I think a horde mode should be the #1 priority. At least for me, that's something I'd really enjoy. I would also love larger scale PvP, but I don't think that's going to happen because they've already reined the game in from the original game, which had 8 versus 8. It's now down to 6 versus 6. So
that's good.
I mean, but yes, I would love like a Battlefield style PvP with this game's combat system. That's not happening at all. But we do know the horde mode is happening, and I really hope they execute on this because it could really be so amazing. It could add so much more replayability to this game. But anyways, I'll also add, speaking of which, their prior game, World War Z, that got a significant amount of updates in the years since its release. They've continued to support it, and that game peaked at just under 7,000 concurrent players. I would say this is a very good sign for Warhammer
That's
40K
incredible.
Space Marine 2, because this game has been so much more successful than that
Yeah.
one. Really great sign that they will be supporting this over the coming year and hopefully years. All right, yeah, well, that just about does it for this video. Just wanted to kind of recap the launch of Space Marine 2, kind of wrap up my thoughts about the game. And again, I wanted to share with you, now that the PvP has come out, that I've played it. And it's pretty fun. It's really simple. It's not something that people are going to be playing for months and months, most likely.
Yeah,
The most
obviously.
dedicated, sure, but the average player probably not. But even just adding like a couple
a
of
little
extra
light
weeks of fun, that alone is more than enough. It's a good time. I like it. And yeah, in general, I like the game. I really like it. I recommend it. Just keep everything we said in mind in terms of like how much do you want your $60? Like how much game do you want out of it? Is 20 to 40, 50 hours enough? If so, this is a great game. If not, well, then it might not be the game for you, but I like it, and I do certainly recommend it. All right, that's it for today. Thank you as always for watching. Hope you enjoyed. See you all next time.
Okay, idea time. For the horde mode. As you like make the horde mode a bit like a roguelike in a way, or you should be able to call in stuff. Like when the horde mode is going, you should be able to like call in a dreadnought, or just a drop pod with more marines in it, like AI marines or some shit, or a Terminator squad just teleporting in and helping you, or just getting like guardsmen reinforcements, or like guardsmen artillery barrage, or just KDNs running in, or whatever, like tanks come in, like something like that. It needs something like that, like a barrage from a ship or some shit, or whatever, like a Thunderhawk just flies over and drops maybe a Predator down or some shit. It could go so hard, like literally. Or like a mounted Creek squad just running through the enemy waves of like Tyranids. It has so much, and or like getting the chapter master like Kalgar, just teleport in and like da 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 da. There's infinite possibilities there. They could make this game so damn good. So damn freaking good. I cannot wait. I honestly cannot wait. I cannot wait to play. I cannot wait to watch more. And I cannot wait for the future of the game. God damn. Whew. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Leave a like, leave a dislike, and subscribe for more. Bye bye.